Alright, so this happened a while ago, before school started, that went down, but I should probably go back even further to when it really first started. It was when Axis Powers Hetalia was in full swing. Second season was still bounding through the fandom and giving out new glorious episodes every Monday. My older sister and I were both very involved in the series, which was a rare occasion since she often didn't share interest with me. Oh, sure, I would force myself to get into whatever she was getting into so we could at least have a reason to hang out. But this was the first she came into my fandom without working for it. It was really nice considering it was still unknown in our small town. It was even nicer to just have someone to relate to. She and I cosplayed it together, watching episodes together, getting merchandise, the whole kit caboodle. At some point, she actually bought a bootleg DVD of Hetalia so she could watch it anytime. A picture I've provided thanks to my mother, lending her camera for a second before she had it sold the next week. Of course, all the episodes just being ripped from the internet, sites that had been them subbed. I watched one or two episodes with her, but really, I was the content with watching them online, so I left her to do it. About 2 or 3 days after she got the DVD, she acted really weird, is the best way I could describe it. In a drop of a hat, she dropped the whole Italia's Ceiling series, setting aside her merchandise and shelving her Italia cosplays, even selling some of them. When I tried to ask her what it was up, she just said she didn't want to talk about it, to the point that she'd glare at me if I mentioned it to her. I was extremely disappointed at losing my sister when it came to sibling bonding at the fandom. At the time, just figuring out she grew out of or something even better. The mindset especially fit in when she started reading Homestuck soon after to it to have something to do. Now here's where things got even weirder. Now it's been a while since then, probably like a month or so. I got the urge to watch some episodes with just some classic good old Italy. Although currently the internet was being worked on by my father, since he was changing the phone providers and all that mess. So I decided to look for that Italian DVD my sister had. Took me a long while, but I found it shoved in the back of the DVD cabinet. Not sure exactly why she shoved it back there, but well, at the time, the bootleg really wasn't that bad, really. It had fan art of everyone as chibis around the world, with the title on top. Same for the disc, just printed on the fan art. I popped the DVD in the player in my room and decided to look through the episodes to find a really fun one. Maybe the one where Romano is first introduced. As I went through the episode choice options, I found something really weird between episode 23 and 24. For those who don't know, it's the Liechtenstein and Switzerland episode. Very cute indeed, and the 24th has an inclusion of Axis on the island arc thing. But there was another square choice like an episode, but there really wasn't a title text to it, saying what number it was or what the episode was about. Though it wasn't that it was untitled that caught my interest, but the screenshot of it was Italy smiling, looking upwards in a content daze. His actually eyes open-minded you, with glistening eyes and what looked like sand. Perhaps what he was lying on it. This blew my freaking mind. For this was something new. I craved for new things in the fandom, always. Perhaps this was a hidden chapter I wasn't aware of, like a bonus episode. I bit my lips and trembled with excitement, and I knew I had this to all myself. Wait until my friends heard about this. I was going to be more knowledgeable than anyone else, of course. When I look back, I wish I wouldn't have found it. Without much ado, I clicked the select button on my remote to watch it. The title animation appeared as always, the large orchestra blaring out for a few seconds to show the dead Japanese katakana of Hetalia with Axis powers next to it. Soon after, it shifted to the view of the island with that the Axis were stranded on, Japan and Germany sitting in the shade of the tree while Italy just laid in the sand, soaking up the sun with a cute, dumb look on his face. Now, before I go on, I've read stories like these before, lost episodes, cartoons, and I know how they went off about it being an extremely bad quality, but this wasn't too bad. Sure, it wasn't the best quality, but it was still quite pixelated from being ripped off the site, but then burnt into a disc, but it was okay. The sound was just a tad muffled, nothing too out of the ordinary. Of course, this kind of made it creepier later when it was able to see it better, but I'll get that into a bit. Back to the episode. While in Italy was sunbathing in his jacket and shorts, the camera cut over Germany and Japan, though they both looked a tad upset, if not a bit worried, and then they started to speak. Two things threw me off. One, there was no subtitles, so I had zero idea what they were talking about. And two, their voice were actually those who voiced them in the series. I was extremely impressed with such raw footage. Though it was a bit muffled, there was no subs. Oh well, as long as Hiroki Yasumoto, Germany's Seiyu, kept talking, I was happy all of the way. The two seemed to be chatting about something serious. Germany clutching his stomach from time to time in pain as Japan would nod and set his hand on his stomach as well. My guess is that they run out of steady food on the items, so they were starving. That was the kind of downer to start the episode on, but it was the beginning. There was only a fun way to get food later on. Just then, Italy called out, having the two of them look up to where he was, which was now currently running around in the ocean. He waved to them, and the two of them waved back unenthusiastically before the other went back to just playing in the sun and water. I didn't notice this until then, but the only thing playing the background of this was the ocean's waves, something not uncommon but certain, kept the atmosphere kind of stoic, especially when the focus was to the hungry and worried nations in the shade. But either way, I was too sucked up in just beautiful new material. I didn't question it. I didn't even care that I know the bulk of it. I mostly cared for the actions anyway. The nations were quiet for a while before Japan seemed to ask something, and Germany looked to him in shock, almost exclaiming before being quietly hushed by the nation island, making him whisper the line instead. Ooh, what was Japan thinking of, I thought. But Japan had repeated the Japanese statement in more quieter and clearer tone, not taking his eyes off from Italy and the water. For a few moments two of them discussed the issue, obviously talking about the Italian, though soon enough the two of them nodded in agreement. At that moment, even though it was just for a few seconds, Germany had made the saddest face I've ever seen. Like, you could burst out of tears at any moment, but kept it back. Honestly, I inwardly flipped my shirt as much as an emotion, even if it was short. Though it made me wonder what even more was to brought it on. The scene changed to nighttime. The three nations huddled around for fireworks warmth, though they seemed at least content with their jackets on. As usual, Italy was fast asleep next to it, sleeping constantly while leaving the other two nations to their thoughts. Still, only the sound of the oceans crashing against the shore was heard in the background as the two were silent, though soon enough the camera panned over them, giving each other a subtle nod. In unison, the two stood up, going over to Italy and picking him up very carefully, not wanting to wake him up. At this point, I was extremely confused. What were they planning to do with him? Were they going to a new location? Quietly, they shuffled the sleeping nation over to the ocean and carefully set him face down. Japan setting his hands over the other's head to keep it still below the water's surface. It didn't take long enough until Italy began to thrash out around, bubbles popping fiercely in the water next to his head, only having Japan press down harder while Germany was looking away with the eyes closed and lip being bitten onto hard. While this was going, my mouth was hanging ajar. Japan and Germany were drowning Italy? Why? I just was watched this insanity. I recognized the Gomennas Hetalia coming from Japan. Sorry, Italy. What the hell? About 15 seconds later, which felt like almost forever of watching him, the poor nation's Italy's limb being fell into a plop in the water, the bubbles ceasing to rise to any more. The deed was done, but why? Japan and Germany picked up the waterlogged Italy and brought him back to shore, placing him next down to the fire, while Germany sat aside, just staring at the fire at the end, contemplating what they just did. Japan unsheathed his sword and kneeled down next to the corpse, taking off his own jacket and settling it aside with one more look to the blonde before to back down. Japan took a deep breath before making an incision from the base of his neck all the way down to his belly button, cutting it in a bit more so he was able to flip the skin back to reveal the bloody organs of the once living nation. At this point, I had to pause the episode, feeling quite lightheaded at this. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I read and looked at gory Italian stuff, but seeing it down in Studio Dean style and done in official voices, or if it's fake, a really good artist and a very good sound alikes, it was just way too surreal for me. And while I had the TV paused, I had a good chance to look at Italy's insides. God, that sounds so weird as I typed this, and they just look so real. Not that they were hypercam, but as if the artist just stared at the inside anatomy of the person for hours, drawing little curves to making it realistic. I wanted to stop watching. I just wanted to turn it off, and abandon that TV with DVD inside, but I was already too far in it. I had to see this through the end, so it would haunt me for the rest of my life if I stopped here. After taking a short breather and drinking some water, I pressed play on my remote to resume the madness. Suddenly, I was greeted by a slurp sound of Japan sliding his hand into Italy's bloody body and pulling out one of his organs out of place. Looking like the liver, with it so detailed, was hard not to mistake the organ. Japan sighed off as he cut off the connecting strand with his sword and set the mess of an organ onto the discarded jacket before going back and setting aside a kidney. Both of them, while Japan searched around, Germany reached over some sharpened sticks as he seemed to have gathered earlier and penetrated the sharp end through each organ that Japan had laid out. With a saddened sigh, he set the organ kebabs on the fire so he could get it cooked, which I didn't know how that was even possible. Once more, after a seemingly long period of time, Germany now pulled the cooked liver from the fire, while handing Japan, who accepted it with his arms being blood-smeared, a kidney. Both of them were in silence before Japan murmured, "Itadakimasu," and both took a large bite from it. Ugh, still makes me feel weird when I think about seeing that scene, but that lightheadedness faded as I heard something made me gasp. "Dotsu? Nihon?" Both of them turned in shock. The camera was panning over to show that Italy was awake. What? How was he awake? They drowned him, or he was just unconscious? Hell, I wasn't even sure what was going on. It seemed like the other two had no idea either. Japan and Germany tried to explain themselves, but Italy began to grow more panic, slowly getting what was happening. It began to scream in pure fear, pain, sadness. I couldn't even pinpoint what emotion was there. But it was so weird to hear him like that. It almost sounded like the man voicing him was in a large amount of pain himself. Japan and Germany went over him, trying to get him to be quiet, though after the large confusion of everyone yelling at once, Germany was the one to finally scream for everyone to be quiet, shaking Italy to try to make him quiet, resulting to just tugging the curl to make him stop momentarily. At this point, when I should have laughed, I was particularly at the point of tears. Germany talked, trying to appear strong and try to explain their situation. My guess of the situation was there was no food left, so they were going to eat Italy since he was the weakest, though he was a nation, right? Well, they were all nations. Why did they have to resort to that? Was that why Italy woke up? Germany confronting Italy while being harvested. Screenshot taken by Fia, added by Kyokyo866. Soon enough, Italy gave an understanding nod, whimpering in pain and fear as well. He sputtered out something, pausing at the point to cough, blood drooling down his chin. Now it was in Japan's turn to talk, seeming that they tried to comfort him in a soothing tone. And after his small speech, Italy nodded once more before looking down, seeing that Germany was gripping his hand tightly. With another nod from the German and Japanese nations, Japan went back over and scooped his hand into his now somewhat functioning body, pulling and cutting his spleen and setting it aside. Italy was almost screamed, reduced to a sort of mixture of whimpering and sobbing. The camera cut to a view of his and Germany's hand becoming more constrict against each other. Shot panned up the frowning Germany, who once glanced at Japan's work before speaking again, calling Italy's attention. He spoke for a bit, trying to smile, and soon Italy smiled back at him. For once in the series, actually opening his eyes to reveal their golden honey color and call them the familiar words he used to call him Captain. Then there was a time skip, and soon a large portions of organs was lying on Italy's jacket. Things I could recognize from being intestines, pancreas, bladder, particularly everything but the brain, lung, and heart. Japan wiped an arm to his forehead, smearing it with blood accidentally before impaling them on sticks and sticking near the fire. He turned back to Germany, who was still holding Italy's hands. He crawled over to get a closer look, and Italy had seemed to pass on again, his eyes lightly glistening and staring blankly upwards with a small smile on his face. Italy smiling even in death. Screenshot taken by Kyokyo866. This shot was the very first one showed in the menu. Japan looked up to Germany, seeing that he was frowning, blue eyes glistening with tears. He still tried to get over having this what happened to him. Japan set a hand on his shoulder, murmuring something seemingly comforting, making Germany nod in agreement and sigh shakily. Japan frowned lightly at this point before he moved on aside, grabbing the dead Italian's free hand and squeezing it while lightly saying something to Germany before looking into the fire where the organs are roasting. Germany glanced at the fire for a moment before looking up to the sky where Italy was staring. The camera panning upwards to it, past the stars, and everything was completely black. And then the episode started playing. Just like that. No credits or anything. Just left the episode on a cryptic or optimistic note. I have no idea. I wish I could have run it on my computer to get screenshots, but the disc refuses to play it on here for some reason. I don't really have a good camera to snap a clear picture. My friend Fia was kind enough to get 2 screenshots for me, though the disc will only work on her computer for long, but I'd rather not look at it again. It may not sound as bad as when you read it, but that made me get away from Hetalia for a while, honestly. Though I am not as weak as stomach as my sister. I still love the series and will continue to love it. Since then, I refuse to watch any anime episodes, but prefer to see fan-made gore over official ones at any time.